That parking garage held a silence so heavy I could feel it pressing against my skin. My parents stood there, frozen, their faces a perfect portrait of shock as they stared at my $250,000 Rolls-Royce. 3 years of complete silence between us, and now here they were, finally forced to see the daughter they'd discarded had become something beyond their imagination. The look in their eyes was worth every struggle, every tear, every moment I'd spent clawing my way up from the bottom. It was vindication in its purest form. My name is Samantha Robertson. I'm 29 now, and that night changed everything between me and my family forever. But to understand why that moment tasted so deliciously sweet, you need to know what it feels like to grow up as the child nobody wanted. In my family, I was child number 4, the accident, the afterthought, the one too many. My parents already had their perfect set: Matthew, the golden firstborn who walked on water, Joseph, the dependable middle son carrying their dreams, and Skylar, their precious daughter who got everything her heart desired. Then there was me, the mistake they never bothered to hide. The inequality in our house wasn't subtle. It hit you like a physical force every single day. When Matthew needed new clothes, my mother made it an event, shopping trips with careful consideration for the latest styles, coming home with bags of brand-name treasures. When my turn came, here's Matthew's old jacket. It still fits fine. Never mind the 2 sizes too big or the permanent ketchup stain on the sleeve. It covered my body, and apparently, that was enough. Joseph needed a laptop for school? Without hesitation, top-of-the-line MacBook, no questions asked. Skylar wanted dance lessons? Of course, princess, whatever you need. But when I needed a calculator for my advanced math classes, it was always, Joseph doesn't need his old one anymore. You can have it. Half the buttons were missing, but I learned to make do. I always did. The hand-me-down stung, but what truly broke something inside me was being invisible when it came to achievements. When Matthew made varsity football, our house transformed into a shrine of celebration. My parents threw a dinner party, invited every relative within driving distance, took endless photos. Our walls became galleries dedicated to Matthew and his uniform. Joseph got accepted to his first-choice college, same treatment. Family barbecue, proud phone calls to relatives, my father practically bursting with pride telling everyone about his brilliant son. Skylar's art got displayed in some local gallery, and my parents acted like she'd been featured at the Guggenheim. They invited neighbors over to see the newspaper clipping, framed it, placed it on the mantle like a precious artifact. And me? I won the state math competition when I was 15. First place out of thousands of students. I came home clutching this enormous trophy, vibrating with excitement, ready to finally have my moment in the spotlight. My mother barely looked up from folding Skylar's laundry. "Oh, that's nice, honey. Can you help your sister with her algebra homework?" That was it. No celebration, no phone calls, no proud parent moment. Just "that's nice" and immediately redirecting my achievement toward helping someone else shine brighter. I stood there holding that trophy, feeling myself shrink until I practically disappeared. That night, I placed the trophy on my dresser and stared at it for hours. It was beautiful, golden, with my name engraved right there for anyone to see. But in that house, it might as well have been invisible. Just like me. By 16, I'd figured out the game. Nobody was going to hand me anything, so I better start getting it myself. I got a job at the local deli after school, minimum wage, but every dollar felt like a small rebellion, proof that I could make my own way. The first thing I bought with my own money was a phone. Nothing fancy, I couldn't afford that, but a basic smartphone that actually worked and wasn't held together with duct tape like the hand-me-down from Skylar. When I showed up at dinner with it, my parents exchanged pleased glances. "Look at Samantha being so independent," my mother said to my father, like I wasn't sitting right there. "She's really mature for her age." What they meant was, look, now we don't have to worry about her anymore. I'd made myself someone else's problem, my own. Senior year arrived, and I knew exactly what was coming. I'd watched this movie 3 times already. Matthew got every penny of his college paid for, plus spending money. Joseph got the same royal treatment, tuition, room and board, the works. Skylar, just a year older than me, received the same generosity. So when my parents asked me to sit down for the talk about my future, I was prepared. I'd been saving every dollar from my deli job because I could see this train wreck approaching from miles away. Samantha, honey, my father started, his voice carrying that rehearsed quality that made my stomach tighten. We need to be honest with you. We've already put 3 kids through college. We just don't have the money to do it again. They presented it like some natural disaster that had befallen them, not a choice they were actively making. Like they'd been struck by lightning 3 times and just couldn't risk going outside anymore. But don't worry, my mother added with a bright smile that never reached her eyes. You're so smart and hardworking. I'm sure you'll figure something out. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Mom. Really heartwarming. But here's the thing, I refuse to let their neglect derail my dreams. I went into overdrive that senior year. I transformed myself into an academic machine. I joined every club that might look good on applications. I volunteered at the animal shelter. I tutored kids in math. I basically became the perfect scholarship candidate. And it worked. I secured a 70% scholarship to our state school's business program. But that still left 30% plus room and board, plus books, plus everything else. Even with my deli job, the numbers weren't adding up. That's when I swallowed what was left of my pride and called Aunt Sandra, my father's sister. Sandra was different from my parents in every way that mattered. She'd never had children of her own but had built an incredible career in marketing. She lived in a beautiful house about an hour away and had always treated me with more kindness than my own parents ever had. My hands trembled when I dialed her number. Aunt Sandra, I said when she answered, I need to ask you for help with something, and I completely understand if you say no. I explained everything, the scholarship, the remaining costs, my parents' refusal to help. I promised to pay her back as soon as I could, with interest if she wanted. Sandra was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said something that broke the dam inside me. Samantha, I've watched your parents treat you like an afterthought your whole life. Of course I'll help you. And you don't need to worry about paying me back right away. Focus on your studies. For the first time in my life, someone in my family had my back. I was so excited I ran downstairs to share the news that I'd solved my college funding problem. But when I reached the kitchen, I found my parents celebrating with Matthew, who had just graduated from his fancy private college. Sitting in our driveway was a brand new Honda Civic with a giant red bow on top. Congratulations, son, my father was saying, his face glowing with pride. You've earned this. Matthew was taking selfies with his graduation gift, grinning like he'd won the lottery. And there I was, standing in the doorway with news about securing my entire educational future, but nobody was listening. Then I had what was probably a stupid idea, but I was 18 and feeling bold. Hey Matthew, I said, since you have a new car now, could I maybe have your old one? I could really use it for getting to campus. The look he gave me, I'll never forget it. Like I'd asked him to donate a kidney. Are you serious? I'm going to sell that car and use the money for my apartment deposit. Why would I just give it away? Because I'm your sister, I said. And I helped you with your economics homework for 2 years straight. He actually laughed. Samantha, you can take the bus like every other college student. It's good for you to rough it a little. My parents nodded along like this was perfectly reasonable wisdom. "He's right, honey," my mother said. Public transportation builds character. That night, lying in my bed, I thought about how my parents had just spent $20,000 on a car for Matthew while telling me that taking the bus would build my character. The message couldn't have been clearer. I was not worth investing in. From that moment on, I was truly on my own. College was exactly what I expected, me grinding it out while everyone else got family support. I lived at home to save money, which meant taking 2 buses every day to get to campus. The commute was an hour each way, but I'd gotten good at making things work. I studied business with a focus on investment management. To pay for books and supplies, I got a job at a coffee shop near campus. The manager, Walter, was this older guy who actually seemed to see something in me. He worked around my class schedule and let me study during slow periods. "You're going places, Samantha," he'd tell me. "I can see it. You've got that hunger." He was right about the hunger. While my classmates were partying on weekends, I was either working or studying. I didn't have time for the college experience everyone talks about. I had goals, and I was willing to sacrifice everything to reach them. Meanwhile, the family dynamics at home grew even stranger. Matthew got married right after graduation, big wedding, naturally, with my parents footing the entire bill. Joseph decided to move in with his girlfriend, and my parents helped him find an apartment and bought him furniture. Skylar moved out next, also with full parental support for her transition to independence. But here's what really cut deep: even though my siblings had all moved out, they were constantly back at the house. Family dinners every Sunday, random weeknight visits, holiday celebrations. And every single time they walked through that door, my parents would light up like Christmas morning. "Our favorite children are here," my mother would literally announce when they arrived, not even trying to hide it anymore. I'd be sitting right there at the kitchen table doing homework, completely invisible once again. Graduation day finally came. I'd made it through 4 years, graduated summa cum laude, and already had a job lined up at Goldman Sachs. When I walked across that stage, my parents clapped politely, like they were attending someone else's kid's graduation. 2 weeks later, they sat me down for another one of their family meetings. "Samantha," my father started, "you're 22 now. We think it's time you found your own place." I couldn't help myself. But Matthew lived here until he was 24. Joseph lived here until he was 23. Skylar lived here until last year. My mother's response was perfectly on brand: "You've always been more mature. More self-sufficient." Translation: "We never cared enough to worry about you in the first place, so leaving should be easy for you." They gave me 2 weeks to find somewhere to live and move out. I found a tiny studio apartment across town, and moving day was just me and a rental truck. My parents didn't help, didn't even ask for my new address. But here's where the story takes its cruelest turn. After I moved out, my parents stopped inviting me to family events. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, birthdays, nothing. Meanwhile, Matthew, Joseph, and Skylar were there for every single celebration, posting their happy family photos on social media like I'd never existed. The first Thanksgiving after I moved out, I sat in my studio apartment eating takeout while scrolling through my siblings' Instagram stories of the big family dinner I wasn't invited to. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. So the next year, I decided to just show up. I bought a pie and drove over to my parents' house on Thanksgiving Day. When I walked in, everyone was already there: Matthew with his wife, Joseph with his girlfriend, Skylar with her boyfriend, my parents, all sitting around the dining room table like a Norman Rockwell painting. The room went dead silent when I appeared. "Oh," my mother said, clearly flustered. "Samantha, we weren't expecting you." "I brought pie," I said, holding up the box like a peace offering. "That's nice," my father replied, and the awkwardness was suffocating. I sat down at the table, and it was like I was a ghost. They all kept talking around me about Matthew's new promotion, Joseph's master's program, Skylar's latest art show. When someone did acknowledge me, it was with fake politeness that felt worse than being ignored. "So Samantha," Skylar said with a tight smile, "how's the little apartment?" "It's fine," I said. "Still taking the bus everywhere?" Joseph asked, and Matthew actually snickered. My parents just sat there, letting it happen. Not defending me, not changing the subject, just watching their other children mock me like it was dinner theater. After we ate, I helped clear the table, said goodbye, and left. Nobody tried to stop me or asked when they'd see me again. That was the last time I showed up uninvited anywhere. And they never called to check on me after that. Not once. We all just stopped. Years went by like that. I threw myself into work, got promoted twice, paid back every penny I owed Aunt Sandra with interest. I bought my own car, a Rolls-Royce Spectre that cost over $250,000. I bought a beautiful apartment in the city center. I traveled to Europe twice. I was building a life, and it was a damn good one. Then last week, 3 years after that Thanksgiving disaster, I was at my desk reviewing a client portfolio when my phone rang. "Samantha, it's Mom." No greeting, no how are you, just straight to business. "Listen, your great-aunt Carolyn is coming to visit this weekend. She wants to see the whole family together. You need to be here Saturday at 6 for dinner." Great-aunt Carolyn. I barely remembered her, some distant relative who lived across the country and sent birthday cards with $5 bills when I was a kid. "I don't think I can make it," I started to say. "This isn't optional, Samantha. She specifically asked to see everyone. Don't embarrass us." Then she hung up on me. I sat there staring at my phone, amazed by the sheer audacity. 3 years of radio silence, and now they wanted me to show up and play happy family for some old aunt I hadn't seen since I was 12. My first instinct was to ignore it completely. But then I started thinking about how much my life had changed since that awful Thanksgiving. I had money now, real money. I was successful in ways they couldn't even imagine. And suddenly, I wanted to go. Not because I missed them or wanted to reconnect, but because I wanted to see their faces when they realized what I'd become. I wanted to watch them figure out that the kid they'd thrown away was now more successful than any of their precious favorites. Saturday came around, and I spent too much time picking out what to wear. I wanted to look good but not obviously expensive. I settled on a simple black dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, paired with understated jewelry worth a small fortune. To anyone who didn't know fashion, I'd look modest. To anyone who did, they'd recognize quality. I decided to park my Rolls-Royce in the shopping center parking lot near my parents' house and walk the rest of the way. I wanted to control the reveal. This whole thing was going to be theater, and I was directing the show. Walking up to my childhood home felt surreal. I could see Matthew's Honda and Joseph's Toyota parked out front, along with what I assumed was Skylar's boyfriend's beat-up Subaru. All pretty modest cars, just like I remembered. I rang the doorbell like a stranger, which I guess I was now. My father opened the door, and for a split second, I saw genuine surprise cross his face. Then the fake smile kicked in. "Samantha! You made it. Come in, come in. Everyone's so excited to see you." The living room was packed. Great-aunt Carolyn was tiny and ancient, sitting in my father's recliner like a queen holding court. She had to be pushing 90. Matthew was there with his wife Jacqueline, Joseph had brought his girlfriend Rebecca, and Skylar was with her boyfriend Wesley. "Everyone, look who's here," my mother announced, like I was some surprise guest instead of their daughter who'd been specifically invited. Great Aunt Carolyn squinted at me through thick glasses. Is this little Samantha? My goodness, you've grown up. We moved to the dining room, and I found myself squeezed between Joseph and Skylar at the far end of the table. Great Aunt Carolyn got the seat of honor next to my parents, obviously. Dinner started, and immediately my parents launched into their usual bragging session about Matthew, Joseph, and Skylar. Matthew had gotten some promotion at his accounting firm. Joseph was finishing his master's degree in education. Skylar's art had been featured in some local show. We're so proud of all our children, my mother gushed to Great Aunt Carolyn. They've all done so well for themselves. Meanwhile, my siblings started their little game of taking shots at me, but doing it with smiles so Great Aunt Carolyn wouldn't catch on. Samantha, I love your dress, Skylar said sweetly. It's so simple. Very minimalist. I guess that's the trend now, right? Less is more. She was trying to call my outfit cheap, but the joke was on her. This simple dress cost more than her monthly rent. Thank you, I said, just smiling. Then Joseph jumped in. Hey Samantha, I noticed you walked here tonight. Are you still taking the bus everywhere? I remember when you asked Matthew for his old car that one time. He chuckled like it was the funniest memory ever. Matthew joined in the laughter. Oh yeah. And Mom and Dad said you could just take the bus like other college students. Build character, right? They all thought this was hilarious. Even my parents were smiling at the memory of denying me basic transportation while buying Matthew a brand new car. I just kept smiling and eating my meatloaf. Inside, I was laughing at how pathetic they all were, still stuck in the same house, the same jobs, the same small-minded thinking, making fun of me for things that happened 7 years ago. Great Aunt Carolyn had been quiet through most of dinner, just listening and watching. Finally, she turned to me. Samantha, dear, I notice everyone's been talking about your siblings, but no one's mentioned what you're up to. What do you do for work? The table went silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. I work for an investment company, I said simply. Goldman Sachs. The silence that followed was absolutely beautiful. I watched my father's face as he processed what I just said. My mother's fork actually stopped halfway to her mouth. Matthew, Joseph, and Skylar all looked confused, like they weren't sure if they should still be making fun of me. Goldman Sachs, Great Aunt Carolyn repeated, clearly impressed. Well, my dear, that's quite an accomplishment. You must be doing very well for yourself. I do all right, I said modestly. The rest of dinner was awkward as hell. My siblings didn't know how to continue their little game of mocking me, and my parents kept shooting each other looks. Great Aunt Carolyn kept asking me questions about my work, and I could tell she was genuinely interested. After dinner, I helped clear the table, just like old times, but the dynamic had completely shifted. Nobody was treating me like the family screw-up anymore. They were all watching me, trying to figure out what had changed. Well, Great Aunt Carolyn, I said, checking my watch, this has been lovely, but I should probably head home. I have an early morning tomorrow. Of course, dear, she said. It was wonderful seeing you again. You must come visit me sometime. My parents immediately jumped up. We'll walk you out, my mother said brightly. Get some fresh air. Of course they would. They wanted to keep up the happy family act until the very end. So the whole crew followed me outside, my parents, Matthew and Jacqueline, Joseph and Rebecca, Skylar and Wesley. They were all chatting and laughing, probably expecting to watch me walk down the street to the bus stop. Instead, I walked straight to my Rolls-Royce. The silence that fell over the group was absolutely perfect. I unlocked the car with my key fob, and the subtle beep seemed to echo in the quiet neighborhood. I got in, started the engine, and pulled up to where they were all standing on the lawn like garden statues. I rolled down the window. My father was just standing there with his mouth hanging open. Finally, he managed to stammer, that car costs at least $250,000. My mother actually gasped. Skylar's face had gone completely white. Matthew and Joseph were staring at the car with this mix of shock and envy that was absolutely delicious. I smiled at all of them. Oh, this old thing? It's nothing compared to my apartment in the city center. The looks on their faces when they realized I owned both a $250,000 car and my own apartment were priceless. They all just stood there, pale and speechless. I rolled up the window and drove away, watching them in my rearview mirror. They were still standing there like statues, staring after me. Best Saturday night I'd had in years. Sunday morning, I woke up feeling amazing. I made myself a nice breakfast, put on my running gear, and headed to Central Park for my usual weekend run. The weather was perfect, and I was still riding high from the night before. About halfway through my run, my phone started buzzing like crazy. First my mom, then my dad, then Matthew, then Joseph, then Skylar. Call after call after call. I ignored every single one and kept running. After my run, I treated myself to brunch at this cute little cafe near the park. That's when I finally looked at my phone. 23 missed calls and about 15 text messages, all from my family. The messages were hilarious. Suddenly, everyone was super polite and interested in reconnecting. From Mom, Samantha, honey, we should get together soon and catch up properly. I'd love to see your apartment. From Skylar, hey sis. I've been thinking we should hang out more. Maybe go shopping sometime? I'd love to see your place. From Matthew, hey Samantha, it was great seeing you last night. We should have lunch soon and talk about your work. Very impressive. From Joseph, Samantha. Man, I had no idea you were doing so well. We should definitely stay in touch. Coffee sometime? Even Dad texted, Samantha, your mother and I are very proud of you. We should have dinner again soon, just family. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I ordered another coffee and enjoyed watching people walk by. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely free from my family's manipulation. 2 weeks went by. The calls and texts kept coming, getting more desperate each time. My mother started leaving voicemails about how much they missed me and how they'd always known I was special. Matthew started talking about family investments and asking for financial advice. Skylar suggested we take a sister's trip somewhere expensive. I deleted everything without responding. Then one evening, I was leaving work when I saw 2 familiar figures standing next to my car in the parking garage. My parents. Samantha, my mother called out when she saw me. We've been waiting for you. I sighed. Fine. There's a coffee shop across the street. We can talk there. We walked to the little cafe in silence. I ordered my usual latte. They got basic coffee. We sat at a corner table, and I waited for them to start talking. Samantha, my mother began, we want you to know how proud we are of you. You were always so independent, so driven. We knew you'd make something of yourself. I almost laughed out loud. We made some mistakes when you were younger, my mother continued. We realize that now. But we want to make it right. We want you to be part of the family again. I just sat there, waiting for the real reason they were here. The thing is, my mother went on, Matthew is getting ready to propose to Jacqueline, and they want a big wedding. And Skylar's been with Wesley for 3 years now, so they'll probably get engaged soon too. There it was. Weddings are expensive, my father said. And since you're doing so well financially, we thought maybe you could help out. You know, as a way to reconnect with the family. Help out how? I asked, even though I knew exactly where this was going. Well, if you could contribute to the wedding costs, it would really help Matthew and Skylar get started in their marriages. And it would show that you're committed to being part of this family again. I stared at them for a long moment. Then I started laughing. Really laughing. The kind that makes people at other tables turn and look. Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to pay for Matthew and Skylar's weddings so I can earn my way back into a family that kicked me out, ignored me for 3 years, and never gave a damn about my success until they found out I had money? My parents looked uncomfortable. It's not like that, Samantha. It's exactly like that, I said, standing up. And here's what's really funny. You guys keep saying you always knew I'd be successful. But if that were true, you would have treated me better when I was growing up. You would have supported me like you supported Matthew, Joseph, and Skylar. You would have invited me to family dinners instead of letting me eat takeout alone on holidays. My mother's eyes were getting watery. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. No, I said, picking up my purse. You can't. Because I don't want to fix it. I've spent my whole life trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it to me. I'm done with that. I walked out of that cafe and never looked back. Sometimes people ask me if I miss having a family. The answer is no. You can't miss something you never really had. My family never saw me as a person worth loving. They saw me as either a burden or a bank account, depending on my net worth. I'm 29 now. I live in a beautiful apartment in Manhattan. I drive a car most people only dream about. I'm surrounded by people who actually like me for who I am, not what I can do for them. The best revenge isn't always getting even. Sometimes it's just living well and letting the people who doubted you watch from the sidelines as you build something beautiful without them. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others who might need to hear that sometimes the family you build for yourself is more valuable than the one you're born into. And don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding your worth when others can't see it. Remember, your value isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to rise above it.